The fate of TikTok in the United States appears to have been decided. The U.S. Supreme Court officially upheld the law that would ban the app in the United States, effective on Sunday. That is assuming there is no last-minute save or sale. The site in the United States will go dark. Now, that law, which allows TikTok to be banned, is, I think, pretty stupid. It's called the Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversary-Controlled Applications Act. Right. Okay. Now, the government basically argued that, China should not be allowed to gather the personal data of American citizens. No. That privilege is reserved for American corporations only. Thank you. The court has also said that TikTok promotes or demotes certain content to advance its business objectives and other goals, which of course is, no shit. That's pretty much what every single company does. All right. That is also no different than any of the platforms, whether it be Meta, Google, whatever, Alphabet. There's like a handful of corporations that control like the vast majority of our media. So really, I can't really name that many more because there aren't really that many more. Okay, that's kind of the problem. But it's no different. Okay, Facebook, for example, gets all of our information, hands it over to, the cops. Okay, so X/Twitter, literally owned by a South African-born billionaire who happened to have dumped $250 million into Donald Trump's re-election campaign. He has programmed the algorithm to promote right-wing voices and to bury left-wing voices. Yeah. Meta products like Facebook and Instagram and Threads, for a while, completely buried politics. Okay? Still kind of burying politics right now, but I guess that's going to change. But right now, they've allowed the right wing to have a massive advantage on their platform. Okay. YouTube's algorithm is also more likely to recommend right wing and religious content to its users. I talked about that in a previous story a while ago. So yeah, I think there's a problem here. Okay. But the U.S. government sees this as like, see, China having a platform, that's a problem. Why? Because you can get facts there. I mean, look, TikTok was an enormous source of information about Gaza, where people often learned the truth about what's really going on. That is not State Department or Israeli government propaganda. Okay? And so, look, when you wanted to talk about Gaza on whether it be YouTube or Facebook, they shut that shit right down. Okay? Because once again, it went against the State Department. It went against, the stuff. We didn't want to be accused of being anti-Semitic, even though you're actually pointing out that, hey, there's a genocide going on in Gaza. Okay? But no, they wanted to shut, and by they, I mean the government, right? Basically to shut off any avenue for people to not be exposed to what is essentially right-wing slop. All right? That said, only American users will be affected by the TikTok ban, but not the government. And so here's a little irony for you. This is from a report by Ken Klippenstein, which said that U.S. State Department employees responsible for something called public diplomacy will not be impacted by the TikTok ban. They will still be on it. We know this because of an internal cable signed by Secretary of State Antony Blinken, which was obtained by the reporter. According to the document, the Biden administration has quietly exempted these personnel from the ban, regardless of any potential failure of TikTok to be divested of its foreign PRC ownership. Public diplomacy, of course, refers to the State Department's messaging targeted at foreign audiences to, quote unquote, promote U.S. interests abroad, or, put it another way, propaganda, to do propaganda on behalf of the U.S. State Department. So let's get this straight. The U.S. bans TikTok because, oh no, foreign propaganda. And yet they still use it so that they could do propaganda. Because of course, right? I know, shocking irony, except that it's really not all that shocking. It's completely hypocritical. That's why people are pissed. The Justice Department argued that China would be able to gather data on Americans or manipulate the content on TikTok to shape U.S. opinion. And yet, that same government is still allowed to use TikTok to shape Chinese opinion because, of course. Look, Biden didn't push back on it. No, he signed the bill. That's it. And this is a layup for Donald Trump, okay? Because you're basically lining it up for Trump to either do one of two things, right? First, overturn it and win the adulation of many, many young people who use it. That would be disastrous for us, okay? Politically, at least, but a giant win for him. Or he could then use that whole idea to try to go after, I don't know, other social media sites who might not be deferential to him. And that would be a problem as well. But yes, it's a dumb idea. Now, speaking of Trump, Trump's already met with President Xi, and he had previously promised to save the app. Why would he do that? Well, it's a layup. Banning this is such a stupid idea, especially since both the Biden and Harris campaign, okay, were aggressively using TikTok to reach millions of voters during the election. It is incredibly hypocritical of them to be in favor of a ban. The leaked cable notes the platform, now one of the most downloaded digital platforms globally, is increasingly a primary source of news for audiences around the world, including those under 35, a critical demographic for PD engagement. In the near term, conversations in the platform shape the policy environment in which we operate. Longer term, they're shaping the perceptions of a generation of foreign audiences. You know what I think this is? It all feels like an effort to try to control the populace of the United States by limiting the sources of information that they're able to view. They do not have a pro-State Department, pro-U.S. foreign policy view. They must be shut down. And again, this wasn't happening under Donald Trump. It was happening under President Biden and the Democrats. So there's that. All right. It always comes down to we must have the most pro-America, pro-State Department, pro-corporate position that we can. And if that means shutting down something that younger people, again, because they're getting their views outside of the mainstream, which is pro-State Department, pro-corporate, pro-America, well, then we got to shut it down. We can't have it. We can't have it.
Can't let that happen.
All right. And again, it's not just Republicans, it's Democrats as well that are playing this stupid game where the only winners are people like the State Department, as well as Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, who apparently now are all just big friends now. They're all just hanging out and they love each other now. When before, Washington Post, what a terrible place, terrible people. Now suddenly, they're all besties. Once again, it just so happens to be one of those things where it's the State Department propaganda versus reality and facts that are inconvenient, as well as, here you go, the 1% versus the rest of us. President-elect Donald Trump's nominee to head EPA, Lee Zeldin, had a bit of a difficult time with the science during his confirmation hearing. So he was being asked by Senator Sheldon Whitehouse if carbon dioxide was considered a pollutant by law. Now, he didn't have a lot of good answers for this, so I'll go through them. He said, quote, this was supposed to be a joke. As far as carbon dioxide emitted from you during that question, I would say no. Really? Uh, okay. I know it's one of those. Yeah, but you're like, well, we exhale carbon dioxide, so how could it be a pollutant? Well, considering how we don't breathe it, we can't breathe it. We get too much of it and we die. Yeah, that could be a bit of a problem. See, it turns out that things that you know can kill you if you have too much of it can be considered to be pollutants, which is why you can't have too much of it in the atmosphere or in your home or whatever. Okay, so now he did say, quote, as far as carbon dioxide that is emitted in larger masses, like from power plants, for example, that we hear concern about from scientists as well as from Congress, that's something that certainly needs to be focused on for the EPA. Well, yeah, it's the Environmental Protection Agency. You're supposed to use your position to protect the environment. They're not doing a good job. In fact, they're doing a pretty terrible job. But White House pressed on this question. He asked, as a matter of law, is it a designated pollutant? Correct? Senator, while carbon dioxide is not named as one of the 6 in the Clean Air Act, the EPA has been treating it as such. But you want to know why? It's because in 2007, Supreme Court had designated that CO2 is a pollutant and ought to be regulated by the EPA. So it basically is like you have to designate it as a pollutant under the law so that the EPA can have the power to regulate it. Okay. Now, that said, if you put too much of it in our atmosphere, it's got some negative effects. In fact, some of those effects were the focus of White House's next question. He said, what effect, briefly and in layman's terms, I know you're not a scientific expert. Yeah, no kidding. What effect are carbon dioxide emissions from fossil fuel combustion having in the atmosphere? Now, Zeldin dodged this question and responded by saying, Senator, while I'm someone who believes strongly that we should work with the scientists, leaving science to the scientists, the policy to the policymakers, and that we all work together. Yeah, okay. That is a giant pile of horse crap. I don't think I've heard so. You're not going to work with the scientists. You're going to ignore the scientists. Just like pretty much every other Republican congressperson. Okay? They don't care about the science. 99% of the scientific community says, hey, we put too much carbon into the atmosphere already, and now the levels of carbon are kind of out of balance, causing our planet to rapidly warm. That's having devastating effects on, of course, temperatures, sea level rise, weather patterns, plants, wildlife, and civilization. Okay? It's having some pretty negative effects. All right? And those effects will continue to compound and compound as it gets worse and worse. So, working together would entail that perhaps we find a way to restore the balance a bit. Not only by reducing carbon output by a lot, but taking some of the carbon we've already put there and putting it somewhere else, perhaps back in the ground or something. Getting it out of the atmosphere because too much of it causes warming. All right. Now, that said, none of that's going to happen under Donald Trump. There will be no attempt at trying to balance out these levels to where we can keep the climate relatively stable like it was before the Industrial Revolution. And there will definitely be no working with actual scientists. In fact, Zeldin has already promised to honor the Supreme Court's Loper-Bright decision, which basically upends a 40-year-old doctrine that required judges to defer to a federal agency when determining the meaning of any ambiguous laws that agency should try to enforce. See, here's the trick, right? Congress can pass laws with some mealy-mouthed language in it, right? But that's okay. Because before that decision, these agencies, filled with people who know what they're doing, will just interpret it and say, okay, this is what they meant. Okay, because they don't, obviously, people in Congress have no idea what the hell they're talking about, All right. But we know. And so, yeah, we get the gist. And we can go and do the detailed plans from here. Now, can't do that anymore. Oh, no, 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 no. Can't do it anymore. Now it'll be up to judges. Yeah, great. Which, by the way, there's been a lot of confirmed conservative justices. So you have this, issue where you have activist judges. And in this case, activist judges that are against the whole idea of trying to regulate greenhouse gases. So, not good. And back to Zeldin, who said, quote, "I don't sit before you as a scientist." No shit. Fortunately, at EPA, we do have many talented scientists who provide that research. They have that talent to be able to tell us exactly what the metrics are of their research. That is until, of course, the Trump administration finds a way to fire them and replace them with pro-fossil fuel political hacks, which is what Project 2025 calls for, the reclassification of agency officials as political appointees, meaning I can fire them now as the head of the executive branch because they're political appointees, and we'll just hire the ones that we approve of, that are paid for, come from think tanks that are backed by Koch brothers and other fossil fuel interests. Yeah, so there you go. That's why he's saying this, by the way. Oh, yes, we have the talented scientists that are all paid for by, fossil fuel interests. They're telling us that we need to, we're doing fine. We're doing great. In fact, you know what we need to do? We need to put more carbon in the atmosphere. We need to drill, baby, drill more drilling, more burning coal. Let's bring back even more coal. So that's what's going to happen. Now, White House kept pressing Zeldin, asking, generally and in layman's terms, what effect do these carbon dioxide emissions have when they enter the atmosphere? To which Zeldin actually correctly, although awkwardly, replied, trapping heat, Senator? Oh my God, we have a winner. Finally admits it. White House then asked about methane, to which Zeldin replied, same. Okay. What effects are carbon dioxide emissions from fossil fuel combustion having in the oceans? Zeldin responds, well, the emissions of greenhouse gases trap heat. Senator, rising sea levels are concerns for where I'm from as well. Apparently not enough of a concern for you to actually do anything to curb that. White House then asked if it was correct that the trapped heat is heating up the oceans, to which Zeldin replied, that is what the scientists tell me. Yes, for now. He then asks, White House asks, have we hit the 1.5 degree risk threshold, and why is that important? Zeldin then replied that he would have to defer to the talented scientists to be able to provide advice on an ongoing basis. To be clear, we have hit 1.5 degrees Celsius, which was supposed to be the max. We're supposed to be under that. We hit it faster than we should have. And again, shouldn't have hit it at all had we actually hit our climate goals. But no, we've not only hit it, but we're going to sail right past it. I mean, disastrous. Now, finally, White House asked Zeldin what he considers to be key climate or ocean tipping points that concerned him. And of course, Zeldin could not name a single one. Right now, the ocean is running out of ability to absorb more carbon dioxide. That's pretty bad because the ocean for a long time has been a sink for carbon dioxide, taking the excess out of the air. But now it's running out of an ability to do that. There have been dead spots in the ocean where there is no oxygen there. There's all carbon dioxide now. And fish, believe it or not, have to breathe, okay? Yes, they breathe through gills. I know this is all basic biology stuff, but they cannot breathe the carbon dioxide, okay? And then what happens? They die. The oceans also get more acidic, which destroys the shells of crustaceans. So no more crab and lobster. You're killing them with the acidification from the carbon, softening of shells. So all these negative effects in the ocean that we're already seeing, bleaching of coral on the reefs, the destruction of habitats, the destruction of entire animal species. I would say we've hit some of those tipping points already, which are not good, but there's more. There's more. But again, all he could say is there is concern about rising sea levels from both sides of the aisle. Oh, I'm sure. I mean, what are we going to do about it? Nothing. Nothing with him in charge. Okay. It's just nothing but reactionary measures. Okay. When disasters hit, that will equal billions of dollars paid out in damages. Mainly, of course, damages to industry, because that is going to be affected as well. It's not just, poor people that are going to be affected. It's industry. It's entire economies. If you think that solving the issue of rapid climate change is going to hurt the economy, that was your argument the entire time. Well, I'd love to do something about it, but we don't want to hurt the economy. We don't want to hurt jobs. Well, just wait and see to what happens to the economy, to those jobs, when we don't do it. Because that's where we're going.
So you don't think we should change the federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour?
No, sir.
Okay.
That was Scott Bessent, a hedge fund manager and U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's pick for Treasury Secretary, plainly saying that, no, he does not support efforts to raise the minimum wage for millions of workers across the country to a living wage. Again, it's at federal minimum wage is $7.25. Okay, I remember when we had the last raise for minimum wage. Okay, 2009, I was working at a grocery store. Okay, but that was forever ago. And we've had massive inflation since then. Well, what happened? I thought we were told that, that we're going to have massive inflation. Oh, things are going to cost so much if we raise the minimum wage, except that we haven't, and costs still went up. What happened? Now, this was during his confirmation hearing before the Senate Finance Committee on Thursday. He told the committee that he does not believe that the federal government should be raising wages for workers, and that instead, it should be left to the states. Now, there's a lot of states that have actually raised their minimum wage through, ballot initiatives that Republicans have tried to block. Okay. And so I can see why he would rather have the states be able to do that so they could try and block it. Okay. Be more effective at blocking it. But that said, it's important to note that Bessent has assets worth at least $500 million and has no idea what it's like to live on minimum wage, $15,000 a year. Let me tell you what, it is not good. It is not fun. It's actually quite awful. And it's bad for both your mental and physical health. Just saying. Not that Bessent or any of his friends are going to care, because not only is he extremely wealthy himself, but is always surrounded by other super wealthy people. In fact, the poorest people around him are probably the ones who work for him. Now, raising wages is not part of his economic plan, which is known as 3-3-3. Oh, here we go again. This is the, what was it? This is a Herman Cain. Okay. 9-9-9, except this is 3-3-3, which involves, if you look at the details, trying to reduce the federal budget deficit down to 3% of GDP, getting real GDP growth to 3%, and producing an additional 3 million barrels of oil a day by 2028. So 3-3-3, what impact is that plan going to have on the working poor, the ones who would benefit the most from raising the minimum wage? Well, according to the Center for American Progress, Bessent's goal would likely actually require massive cuts to anti-poverty programs and an increase in middle-class taxes to be achieved. Oh, so wait. cutting aid for the working poor, who, despite working, are still poor and therefore need some of these anti-poverty programs, and increasing taxes on the middle class. Not the rich, but the middle class. In fact, they have their own plan for the rich, and it's to give them more tax cuts. Look, Besson wants to extend Trump's 2017 tax scam law, which benefited the very rich. The Center for Budget and Policy Priorities reported that households with incomes in the top 1% will receive an average tax cut of more than $60,000 in the year 2025, this year. Okay, so when they go to file their taxes this year, okay, well, for this year, in 2026, they'll have saved $60,000. Now, compare that to the average tax cut of less than $500 for houses in the 60%. And again, when you talk about the inflation, and especially the inflation that's going to come as a result of Trump's tariffs, that $500 is not going to go very far. It's not going to stretch. As a share of after-tax income, tax cuts at the top for both households in the top 1% and the top 5% are more than triple the total value of the tax cuts received for people with incomes in the bottom 60%. Which, by the way, those tax cuts also massively drove the deficit. The Congressional Budget Office estimated in 2018 that the 2017 law would cost $1.9 trillion over 10 years, all while failing to lead to more household income. In fact, research shows that workers who earned less than about $114,000 on average in 2016 saw no change in earnings from the corporate tax rate cut, while top executive salaries increased sharply, while the tax law's 20% pass-through deduction has largely failed to trickle down to the workers. It benefited the corporations. This is not a surprise. So, yeah, I know a lot of people are like, trickle down has failed. Actually, no, it didn't. Trickle down has done exactly what it was meant to do, what it was designed to do, which is to enrich the bosses. So the trick and trickle down was to get you to believe that as a worker, you would benefit from your bosses getting more money. So we're going to see more of that, okay? But no increases in the federal minimum wage. By the way, 15 should be the floor. And it should be more than 15, honestly. At this point, it should be about 20, 25. All right. Now, that said, every time you talk about raising the minimum wage, you get these people who argue, but guys, what about the mom and pop shops? What about the small businesses? Okay. They just cannot afford it. Really? That's actually not true. It's according to a new study from Berkeley economist Michael Reich that found that small businesses actually do benefit from raising the minimum wage. Wait, what? How? This was a working paper released in 2022, so it's actually not as new as I wanted it to be. But they found that $15 an hour and higher minimum wages in California and other states and cities actually gave employees more financial security without causing employers to cut jobs. Some of these places end up, what did they do? They passed on some of the cost to the consumers, but with little negative impact. So they still saw the same amount of business. They were able to pay their employees more without impacting their profits. And there was a benefit that was unexpected. You see, paying them more actually made it so that employees stayed around. There was less turnover. Less turnover means less spending on advertising new jobs and training new workers. Constantly having to train more and more people because you have such high employee turnover. Okay, so that costs money. And of course, happy workers, well-paid workers are happy workers. Happy workers are more productive. Simple as that. Now, the author found that among all businesses and workers studied, higher minimum wages only led to lower employment among high school age workers in small businesses. So understand that the only people affected were kids that should actually be in school at the time. They saw less jobs. But their main job is to be educated. They should be able to study more and work less. So there you go. I mean, that's the reality of the situation. But what Bessent is doing is he's, of course, tripling down on literally bullshit trickle-down economics and the gutting of social safety nets, which is going to have the effect of completely obliterating the working poor. A Republican lawmaker in Montana's House of Representatives recently made a bizarre argument to try to justify the state's new bathroom ban, or proposed bathroom ban. Now, this bill was introduced by Representative Carrie Seekins-Crow. Her bill basically bans trans people from using restrooms in public buildings, including schools, prisons, jails, and domestic violence shelters, which align to their gender identity. So this is your classic bathroom ban. Okay. Now, there's an additional gross thing that was added onto this. It would also allow anyone who encounters a trans or non-binary person in one of these facilities to do a lawsuit against that person, or whoever granted their entry up to 2 years after. I mean, I don't think I should have to go into how this could be abused, not just against trans people, but suspected trans people, cisgender women who don't look womanly enough. Oh, like that would ever happen, except it does. Yeah. And so, yeah, this could absolutely be abused. And it's super harsh just for wanting to use the bathroom as a trans person. And odds are very, very unlikely that you will ever run into a trans person in the bathroom. And if you do, you are not likely to know. Unless you're doing genital checks. And if that's the case, then you're the weirdo. Trying to inspect random people's genitals. What's wrong with you? Seekins-Crow, by the way, she became infamous in the state after saying that she would rather have a dead child than a trans child. Wow, how pro-life. What a great parent to have. Wow. And by the way, I know why she's like that, because I've heard of this. These people view children as objects that they own. Okay? No, I own my child. They also consider those children to be a reflection of them. All right? So what their child does reflects off of them as a person, as a parent. And so, if their child happens to be transgender or gay, then they would consider that as something that they did. They did it wrong. Oh, I must have messed up somewhere. I don't want people to know of my failure and to judge me for it. Remember, it's not about protecting the children. It's about protecting themselves. Okay? Their insecurities. All right? Look, there are parents out there in red states that have transgender children. And you know what happened when they actually decided to support their kids and to learn about being transgender? Then they ended up losing a lot of their families, their communities that have turned on them. I mean, it's really messed up. Look, being trans is not it's not a thing that you can teach someone, okay? To be, okay? This is a deeply personal identity issue. It comes from within, not from without. You can't become trans by watching a TV show or reading a book. That's not how it works. Okay? Now, this lady, getting back to her, she said that the bill was necessary to protect women's privacy and safety, which she said were under attack due to cultural trends. Trans people are not a trend. It's not a cultural thing. Transgender people have always existed. They always will exist. I mean, what are these people thinking? Are they even thinking, or are they brain dead? Look, let's also be clear, right? There is absolutely no evidence to support the wild accusations, notions that trans women are a threat to cis women, especially like in a bathroom. Really? You know who the biggest threat to cisgender women is? It would be cisgender men. People who look like me. All right? That's it. Now, am I offended by that? Yes, I am actually. I'm pissed off at the cisgender men who tend to attack and denigrate women. This is not an issue where trans women are attacking, people in bathrooms. That's not what's happening. Okay, no, it is cisgender men. As for trans women, look, none of them have ever harmed me. They've never harmed any of the women I know in my life. But I do know several women that have been harmed by cisgender men. And speaking of harm, these Republicans are doing a hell of a lot of harm to trans women. Representative Zoe Zephyr said during a debate over this bill, trans people walk through the state of Montana afraid enough already. Leave trans people alone. Let me be the woman I'm happy to be. Let me live my life. Her life isn't having any sort of negative impact on anyone else's life. Nothing tangible. No, there's no reason not to let people be themselves. But one Republican thinks that he's got a good argument. This is State Representative Jedediah Hinkle, who pointed out that some trans women actually identify as lesbians. Oh, so they're attracted to women. There's this old, weird belief among some transphobes that that transgender women are actually gay. But that's not true. No, there's plenty of transbians, okay? Plenty of trans women who prefer the company of other women. And so this guy's like, oh my God, did you know? Did you know? Whoa. Now, and he says that because of that, if they were allowed to enter a woman's restroom, they would immediately cream their pants. I'm not kidding.
Sexual anarchy.
What are you talking about? Here's his quote. So we have an individual who is dressing like a woman, changing their name to a woman, but is also at the same time attracted to women. Yeah, and in his example, to show how dangerous these transbians are, brought up a cisgender male janitor who would go into women's restrooms to then sit and listen to women going pee because that's how he gets off. Not to kink shame here, if this is the case, but that kind of sounds like Hinkle's barely disguised sexual fetish. And his example is not a trans woman. It is a cis man who is like going in to that bathroom apparently to get off. Well, once again, you've actually disproven your point and proven my point that it's actually the cis men that are a bit of a problem. And obviously not all of them, but some of them for sure. Look, I feel like this is one of those mask off moments for these people. And not just these people, but it's for the entire trans bathroom debate. It's just nothing more than dudes, okay, that are arguing for these bans by thinking up the weirdest sexual stuff and saying, well, that must be it. No, none of this stuff happens, okay? None of this stuff happens. None of this stuff is being done by transgender women. I would think that it's actually far more frightening for a woman Okay. You know, to know about this stuff, to know what these actual cisgender men are thinking of these weird scenarios, okay, than it is for a transgender person coming into the bathroom just to pee. Okay. Because, you know, compared to the weirdness that people like Jed are thinking up, all right, a trans person coming into the bathroom, not scary at all. And it shouldn't be, because there's nothing to be afraid of. A Louisiana town that voted for President-elect Donald Trump is about to find out what that's going to mean for them. Now, Trump and the Republican Party, that now has a majority in Congress, have pledged to overturn the Inflation Reduction Act, which is designed to help communities, specifically small, underfunded communities, combat climate change. So the Inflation Reduction Act contained tens of billions of dollars in funding for communities that ended up voting for Donald Trump. Not that they would know, okay, because the Democratic Party has terrible messaging and refuses to go on smaller shows, sticks to mainstream media, and nobody believes in mainstream media. Mainstream media is also funded by fossil fuel interests. Okay, so now, according to a report by E2, a group tracking the effects of the law, red districts actually had the biggest growth in green jobs as a result. And an August report from the Clean Investment Monitor, which tracks public and private investment in climate technology, also found that red states, including Nevada, Wyoming, Kentucky, and Georgia, have seen the biggest jumps in clean energy investments. Texas, the oil state of Texas, you know what they've received? $69 billion in clean investment since the law passed. Second only to California. And not all the money has been spent yet. So, but do you know what some of that money brings? Jobs. But not just jobs, but also tax credits available for things like home energy improvements and certain alternative fueling sites. Not only that, but it also helps repair damage from storms, okay, from climate change related driven storms, as well as to ensure that housing is more protected from the effects of climate change fueled weather. Okay. So, for example, Sulphur, Louisiana, there's about $100 million in investment set aside for disadvantaged communities. Sulphur is pretty damn disadvantaged, right? Now, that money was, again, to help them combat pollution and better weather the effects of climate change. So now, if Donald Trump goes through with his promise to get rid of it, then all that money, gone. All the jobs, gone. And of course, the money that includes that is included in to help fix hurricane-damaged homes. So now, one resident in the area, Cynthia Robertson, she leads a nonprofit in the area, and her nonprofit has been trying to get these loans, right? These grants, I should say, to be able to fix homes in these areas. All right. So unfortunately, she was told by the EPA, look, there's not enough time to go and approve all these grant requests before the inauguration, which means all this stuff, this money is left up in the air. Her and her partner organizations have sought more than $19 million for something called a local improvement plan, which includes shoring up roofs, remediating mold and mildew, providing homes with solar-powered air conditioning, and building a community center where residents can find refuge during emergencies. All this stuff seems pretty good, actually. Smart investments, right? However, since, again, Donald Trump, he's coming in, Lee Zeldin, probably going to be running the EPA, okay, that it will be those people that will decide the fate of these grants. And that fate is very uncertain, okay? And now there's another small town in the area called Portiatown, all right? It's a pretty poor area. The median is about $40,000 a year for wages. Okay, the life expectancy is about 69, so lower than the national average. So they're not doing very well. Now they voted for Donald Trump. Now Portiatown is right in the path of hurricanes. In fact, one of the residents, Jessica McGee, said of the storms that she has noticed them getting closer and closer together and being more and more active. Now, of course, that's a result of climate change. It's what the scientists have been warning about. Like, hey, climate change, it's going to make storms happen more often and be stronger. Okay, it's not causing the storms, but it's fueling it, making them worse. Now, McGee, her house was damaged back in 2020 by Hurricane Laura, and she has not had the money to be able to fix it. Now, this is where these grants would have made a huge difference in her life. Okay, so she's disabled. She's on a fixed income. She can't afford to fix up her house. Here comes that grant. Well, that would help her fix up her house, and actually probably improve her health as well. Okay, this is what it does. How poor and disabled people fix up and then weatherize their homes against future storms. That said, how does she vote? Well, she didn't. She's like, doesn't really make a difference, but it does. And look, she's not alone. A lot of people either didn't vote or they voted for Donald Trump. Donald Trump and Republicans who promised to take these grants away from the people who need them. People like Tony Rodriguez. Okay, Tony Rodriguez flew an F Biden sign. All right, and he's like, yeah, I'm just trying to raise awareness because I heard from somewhere that Biden was sex trafficking children and it was selling out America. So I'm just raising the, awareness here. Tony Rodriguez literally has rain going into his bedroom because he's got holes in the roof from these storms. These grants would help him. And by the way, when told about it, he's like, oh yeah, no, that'd be great if some of that money actually came to help me. Well, it'd be wonderful. Then at least Biden would be, you could say that Biden actually did something. But he did. Except that if it doesn't happen, it wouldn't be Biden's fault. It would be, well, Donald Trump's and also yours. Okay? We know who to blame here. If Trump gets rid of this IRA, you ain't getting none of that money. That's the fact. Look, when it comes down to it, the IRA has been beneficial in red districts. But the thing about these infrastructure bills is that the effects are not immediate. All right? You can't just look at how much they've built as soon as you passed it. No, it takes time. It takes time to do these investments, which are not immediately felt by the American people. All right? So they can go and say, well, it didn't do anything for me. Democrats didn't do a shit for me. Except that now there are these grants that could actually help fix up your house, make it so that it doesn't rain in your living room or on your face when you're trying to sleep. But, now, since you voted in a Republican who's very likely to either take these grants away or, and this is more insidious, by the way, and I think more likely what they're going to do, or at least some of them are going to do, take credit for them. Let it go and take credit for them. And look, and by the way, before they take credit for them, I just want to point on the record that these same people, politicians, are like, this is the Green New Deal, socialism, communism. By the way, it's neither of those things. The same people also called it a monstrosity, like Lauren Boebert. That's the Green Group giveaway. Yeah, they're all playing politics with money that can seriously help their districts. And they know this. But nonetheless, Donald Trump's not that savvy, right? He might actually just be like, oh, let's get rid of it anyway. I don't care. Either through an executive action or enough Republicans in Congress are like, no, let's get rid of it. And if that happens, their voters will have once again shafted themselves by voting for Republicans. The leopards will come to their face, and they will feast. They will feast. At this point, you have to ask if they're ever going to learn. In order to do that, though, to learn, they would actually have to open their minds and to realize that maybe, just maybe, Trump and the Republican Party do not have their best interests in mind. And that, unfortunately, I don't really see happening. At least not now. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe, hit the bell icon in order to get notified whenever a new video is released. And if you want to support independent, progressive media through this difficult time where it seems like everybody is shutting down, you can become a member on our YouTube page, you can become a subscriber on Facebook, or you can go to my Patreon. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf. Thank you.